This conference will now be recorded.
It
Okay.
looks like everybody has entered their names, so we're good to go in terms of attendance.
Woohoo! All right. Um, well, thank you for joining me in my portion of the regional sessions. Today we're going to go through. Why aren't you letting me do it? Okay. Today we're going to break down the regional sessions accordingly into the different conferences. One thing that's important to note is that all of the same material is going to be covered in the same throughout the regional discussions. So we're not approaching each region differently in terms of what we're covering. We're all covering the same items. So I want that to be noted. The first item that I'd like to talk about are the events that take place in your regions. And this is, again, like I said, throughout all the NCJLA. But so we had a coaches survey we sent out a little while ago, and that was intended to draw feedback on the events that the NCJLA had ran for the last few years regarding play days and different type of large events held for organizations throughout the NCJLA. And the purpose was to find out, are you getting value out of these events? Is it worth your time and effort? And what are the things that you like about them? What are the things that you don't like about them? So the survey itself was pretty comprehensive. Hopefully those of you that are out there that the coach saw the survey and were able to participate. The participation numbers were okay. Of course, you always want to drive close to 100%, but there could have been greater participation, but we would have liked more. But regardless, the information that was provided to us is essentially that the overall consensus is that people like what we're putting together in terms of the play days. So I want to cover these survey results here quickly. The current play day formats, the levels, all the different things that were included, and the items that people responded back to in those surveys is that they like the 2 to 3 mini games or halves, so the opportunity to play against numerous teams in shorter times. The 8U, 14U girls, obviously that doesn't relate to the boys' side, but overall, it looked like people wanted to have opportunities to have play days for those age ranges. The girls 14U, or 12A would like to see those limited to one location. Obviously, there's not as many teams associated with those divisions, so they like that opportunity. The 8U, 10U boys, again, the consensus with respect to the play days for those age groups was that they're liked. People did, out of the ones that did submit information about those play days results, the 12U boys wanted to put a limited basis on of which clubs were hosting. We always kind of throw out at the beginning of the season if there's a club that would be interested in hosting play days. Traditionally, with the older groups for the boys, it's focused in on specific on doing it regionally, and those play days have been led by either the program, the club that's done it the year before, in conjunction with the officials organization. There just isn't a lot of feedback regarding those items outside of the clubs that already participate in them. So if that's something that you guys are interested in more of, or finding out additional information about, or creating one of those opportunities yourselves, please reach out and let us know. So we can break down the Jamboree feedback for the 10Us and 8Us. Did the NCJLA scheduling of Jamborees assist your club schedulers? Was your club able to secure enough games? So the process for this year, obviously, we try and improve upon the scheduling of Jamborees every year based on feedback from the previous year. So this year we did things a little bit differently with giving teams the ability to sign up for time slots and opponents. So you kind of drove more of your schedule this year than in previous years. And there was the opportunity to sign up for jamborees at the scheduling day, on-site scheduling, as well as an online form to sign up for those jamborees. Let's see. Overall, the NCJLA is not sure if jamborees at this point are going to be possible due to COVID moving forward. We still want to get your feedback with respect to jamborees should the season go as we hope. And if, in fact, we can break this into two different types of discussions. One, we've got the COVID-related impacts that would take place, which obviously would take the group events in another direction. But outside of that, sticking with things as normal as they could possibly be, the type of feedback we're looking for is, again, to reinforce, are the survey results accurate in terms of your general support of the jamborees and play days that we put together? Is there anything we're missing, or are there any opportunities that we're missing with respect to the regions, locations, the structure? And then are there any additional new events you'd like to see in your region? Is there anything else that, opportunities that we're missing out on? So with that, I'd like to throw it out to the group for any feedback you have regarding any of those events. Nope. Laura, is there anything in the chat that you can see related? I can't see it.
No, nothing in the chat, but I mean, I'll take that you guys like the events that you have. So
yeah, this is Eric. Our club
Yeah, Colorado Hills, we didn't participate in the AU and NU Jamboree, so.
Okay. All right, with that said, I'll keep moving. Based on that, I'm assuming that you guys are happy with what's being done and there are no changes you guys want? Okay.
well, bravo, Chris. Good job on the event.
It's, in all honesty, it's one of those things that I'm, as we do these meetings in the off season, the NCJLA staff, we really do want to do right by the entire, by all the organizations as a whole, and getting your feedback is what drives these changes year in and year out. So I do hope that as we go through these, that you're satisfied with a lot of these events and changes that we take on a yearly basis, simply because it's because of your feedback, and in an effort to try and improve things as much as possible without trying to do too much. So it's your feedback is essential for making our organization better.
Hi, sorry, it's Hetty from Sacramento Lacrosse here. I tried really hard to come to your play day because the Sacramento one was cancelled for lack of support. I tried really hard to take my team to the Petaluma or the Pleasanton one, and then at the last minute, none of my team were prepared to go that far. And as a 10U team, I do get it. But I'd quite like to know from the other clubs, like around the Sacramento area, why they didn't want to participate in the one in Sacramento, because I think it's a great format, but I can't get all my 10U girls to drive all the way to the Bay Area for it. So I was wondering if there's any feedback from the other more local clubs as to why they didn't want to do the Sacramento play day.
This is Dominic with Folsom. One of the reasons why we didn't want to do our 10Us to go to this year's one was the previous year when they had gone. There was a lot of problems with the, field and referees, because as most of you know, we have our own city league. So we do end up playing each other quite a bit after those jamborees. And going to a local jamboree and playing teams we're already going to play, for the most part, wasn't appealing to, I would assume, most clubs. I'm already going to play Granite Bay and other teams like that that are local, part of our city league that we run. So that would probably be why was low participation from the Sacramento area clubs for that reason. Because the previous year when we had teams go, we just ended up playing the same teams we already play. So it wasn't that big of a draw for at least Folsom this year, and I assume some of the other ones also.
This is Locko. I would echo that in some respects, because we have tried to go up to a Reading jamboree as a kickoff, and that hasn't happened in the last couple of years. But for the exact purpose of trying to play clubs that are not the ones that we play during the regular season. I mean, my boys played JV and varsity, so that wasn't the same issue. But I'm sure for the younger teams, that might be participate in looking for games against other teams that you wouldn't be otherwise playing in the regular season.
So can I ask a clarifying question to piggyback on Hetty's? All the other play days, they play teams that they will see in season in the play day format. So from what I'm hearing from Dawn is that you want to play teams that you're not necessarily going to see at a play day. So whereas it's kind of reverse for the teams in, say, the East Bay and San Francisco area, they want to play people that they're going to see in season to kind of get a preview or preseason scout on before the stores. So is that different?
Our city leagues, because our city league's not run that way. We don't keep score.
Oh, no. I'm saying just play days in general. Like play days.
But I'm not worried about scouting Granite Bay.
Not the 10U and 8U. I guess I should clarify, like the 12U and 14U.
The 12U and 14U, I'm not
I know
sure
for
why
Eldorado
our
Hills,
clubs
we
wouldn't want to. All right, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, that's okay. Our 10U and 14U like to participate in the play days if we can, for same reason, to see how we're doing. And then if we find our team or certain players are kind of either at the right or not at the right level, then we can make the adjustment before the season starts. But since our 8U and 10U doesn't participate in NCJLA, that's why we don't do the jamborees.
And
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't
we
know
were
if
just
I've seen a
talking
lot,
about
Laura. I don't know if we've seen a lot of 12U and 14U play dates offered.
Yeah, there's a 12U and 14U play day for the past 4 years at the Bartholomew Sports Complex, and then I believe Eric has offered from Folsom to host the boys play day, where they the NCLRA comes up and does a small practice scrimmage up there. I'm not quite sure because they don't run through the NCJLA. We don't see when they organize those dates, but we do offer, on the girls' side at least, a 12U and 14U play day every year up there.
So
yeah, and so our
only the girls' side?
The NCLRA chooses to organize their play days, and I think Eric is about to chime in on that, if that's him. Okay.
Yeah. So the NCLRA, that's what we use as our play day, right? For the boys' side is just host games for all those guys. Our girls, we typically just put that out to the coaches, and they reach out to the family, and if they can rally enough people, then they go. So like our 14U girls went this year, had a great time. Our 12U coach and players couldn't get a squad together, so they didn't do it. So we offer it every year, but we certainly don't force these teams, hey, you've got to go to this play day, right? If they can rally it, go for it. And most of them want to have that. So I think the offering is great. It's just whether the teams themselves can swing it.
So I'm just going to speak on, I've coached the 14
And Davis
team at Pleasant Grove. This is the first I've ever heard of these play days. So I don't know if I'm not doing my due diligence and finding this information. But this is the first I've heard of it, and I've coached the team for the last 2 years. That's for the boys side, 14Us.
Yeah, so the NCLRA one, the ref training is not a public play day, right? It's we basically play El Dorado Hills, and we have for the last 6-7 years to do local ref training. It's not an open play day for everybody.
So one thing I would say, and this is going based off of some stuff I heard in the meeting prior to this, I think it would be a great opportunity start of the season to help teams select, whether they're going to go into a B division, a rookie division, an A division, a rookie veteran, a rookie B. I don't know what they all are anyways, but you kind of get what I'm saying. To get out and play some local teams, if we are just going to do play days with local teams, I think the benefit to it would be to allow teams to kind of see where they're going to play, so we don't run into some of those issues that I've personally dealt with in the past with, teams thinking that you're trying to stack up wins or, what have you.
That's really good feedback. Thank you.
So that would have to take place before we register teams, right? So we would, if we were to do something like that, it would have to be November, December timeframe.
Well, now that we're moving it back to third week in January? Is that? Let me look at my notes here real quick. With the with moving the date back, it might help just with the younger teams. I don't know if we'd be able to play in January with the rain and everything, but team registration is
that's still really good feedback, and we can definitely follow up with you guys about that to figure out a good date and maybe neutral location, especially if that seems to be something that people are really concerned about with B levels. So.
For me, for example, I coached the team 2 years ago, right? This was my first year coming into this team. I had no idea what my team's skill level was. And I know that as our clubs are still growing, we have, for us, we're trying to get our high school level to CIF. There's going to be a lot of change in the coming years within our program. So I would imagine that coaches are going to have the same struggle in not really knowing their skill level of the team until they start playing. And trust me, I'm not a coach, nor is our club a club that wants to sit there and rack up wins without having any competition. It's not fun for anybody. It's so I think somehow, if we could figure out a way to do a preceding kind of kickoff to the season, that would be great.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a nice way. You might not be able to recategorize your team, but you may be able to move some players around, some players that you thought might not be able to hold their own. Now you can see actually you can move them up to the veteran, or maybe somebody who's struggling, they might need to go down to the rookie. So some adjustments can be made to your teams. Maybe also the way that we present the jamborees, that I don't think they're intended for scouting, rather just to get an opportunity to play in a less competitive environment where coaches and referees are still encouraged to be involved, shorter format, more turnaround, maybe just presenting the jamboree format as an opportunity for your coaches and parents to learn a little bit more about the game rather than in the moment of a real game.
Yeah, I love that. I think it brings together the whole greater Sacramento region of lacrosse as one family. I get it. Come season time, we are in competition and stuff like that. But for the kids and for the greater cause of the sport, I think that's great.
I think what it sounds like right off the top is that at least for the Sacramento region and the surrounding areas, defining the purpose of the play day, and with that understanding, coming up with the time frame in which we would have it, or jamborees, so that we're meeting the demands of the community and having it in a time frame that's appropriate for what those priorities are. So I think those are some good questions that we have to define in order to really target the value, because that is a region that that we've canceled events for lack of registration, and that is a shame. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, what is that telling us? So I think this is a good opportunity for those on this call to help us understand that and to get on the same page with everybody, because it does sound like perhaps the reason behind the jamborees may be different from region to region. So
yeah, Chris, can I make one more suggestion? It seems like, and maybe I took it wrong, we shouldn't be looking at other teams necessarily for how we go and register where we're going to play, right? Like, see how we stack up against this team next to us on whether we're going to go A, B, or veteran or rookie. We should do that by looking at our own group of kids and using the NCJLA guidelines to say, yeah, here's an A player, a B player. I mean, there's a lot of info out there, and do that within ourselves, not necessarily saying, oh, okay, are we at the same level as Pleasant Grove? Okay, if we are and they're going BV, let's go BV, right? I think we should look at the players we've got and make that choice, and not worry about where we're going to land.
So let me speak on that real quick. I guess the example I was giving, and again, this is just based off of my personal experience in 1 year coaching. I had 11 kids. I had 11 kids on my team, and 3 of them are brand new players, right? So, and being a first year coach and coming into it, not knowing the skill level of a 4-year, some of these 4-year players or whatever, that to me was very challenging. I know a lot of your guys' clubs feed a lot more kids than say our club is feeding. So it's not that I'm trying to base my decision off of what other clubs are, but just simply, I don't know where we're going to stand in comparison to some of these other teams, I guess, if that makes sense at all. Having a squad that's only 11 players, well, okay, that in itself is kind of making me nervous to go up to an A level or a veteran level at the start. Having 3 rookie players, never played before. Well, now at all times, I'm going to have rookie players on the field. If I throw them into an A level, it's not going to be worth it for some of these players. So that was kind of the experience I had with it. It made it very challenging for me in that year to base, what bracket to pick at the start of the year. Well,
I think, Connor, thanks for that feedback. I think this is good. This is good information. I think we do have to move the conversation along. We got a couple other components that we need to cover during the session, but I will say this, that Connor, if you and if other people find themselves in a position where they're relatively new to their teams or the game and are struggling to evaluate, that there are other resources out there, individuals that can come help assist with evaluating talent and try and determine, whether it's either watch the players play or coaching resources that can kind of ask you some questions that would help assist you in determining where those teams should be registered. Those are out there. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, send an email, raise a hand, give me a call, and I'll help either connect you with people or resources to get those things done, because we want to make sure that, to your point, we get you in your team's in the right division.
Well, and it's for the better, in my opinion, it's for the better cause of the sport, relations with other teams. I didn't want to kick off my coaching career with bad relations with other teams or something like that, thinking that I'm sandbagging these leagues. That's not at all what I wanted to do. So, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you got it. All right. With that note, I'd like to move to the next session. Do we have either Ted or Lynn on the call?
Yep, I'm here. Lynn's here.
Okay.
I think Ted's we're splitting these calls.
Sure.
So I'm with the cool group, and then I'm doing a whatever at the next thing. So hello.
Okay. Well, I'll hand off to you for this section, if that's all right.
Sure. Who's driving the slides?
That'd be me.
Oh, nice. Okay. So I think the purpose here was to talk really quickly, speak to what the chapter does for you guys and kind of what support they can give. but in a really abbreviated fashion. I know that during the delegates meeting, when we all come together in September, usually, you know, I'm there and the chapter pres is there. But I think what we wanted to focus on is just getting you guys thinking about a couple of the things that the chapter and certainly US Lacrosse can support you in the post season, which this year is is a little different. So just to remind you, there is, you know, there's US Lacrosse, of course, the national governing body, the folks that support you, and that's me. But there is, of course, a chapter, a really active chapter, actually, in Northern California. Laura is on that board. There's a number of folks from the lacrosse community on that board, and it is currently being led by Ted Patchett. Don Aiello was the president for some years, and I know you've all seen him speak. So they are there. I think, Laura, you could probably flip through to the next. Oh, yes, this is their.
Keep going.
Yeah, I know.
Keep going.
Do I have to do the lasso?
No, keep going.
I think, you know, the
Next
point is, yeah, exactly. Next slide, next slide. Let's move it on. Yeah. So really what the chapters in US Lacrosse, they've kind of gone through in a bit of an evolved process. You guys might have noticed if you've been around for a while, the last couple of years, we as US Lacrosse and myself for sure have started to work much more directly with the league, with NCJLA. Certainly from a financial standpoint, we're directing a lot more dollars directly towards the league to help with everything from coach education to player scholarships to whatever. I know that's been covered before, but what the chapters used to do is they used to actually put on a lot of the coach education and training, and now that's really being driven by the league. But we still, of course, you know, promote all of that. There was going to be a Western Regional Conference in Oakland in November 2020. That is not happening. That got postponed to 2021, just FYI. But these are, you know, these are some of the other things they do. I think the most important thing for the chapter that you guys should really remember if you're trying to grow your programs is they have a really great loaner program for sticks and equipment, or for equipment, sticks, balls. I think they have goals. They have a whole inventory of stuff that you can connect with them with, and they will lend that out to you. They're really awesome about that. They do have their Hall of Fame coming up. I'm not sure when they're going to have an event.
Yeah, due date is in June, but we don't know when we're going to have the actual ceremony.
Yeah. So, and then, of course, at the high school level, the chapter supports the All-American and the academic All-American process, and when we have national teams on the girls' side. So a big topic for the chapter that meets monthly, their board, has been officials recruiting and retention, and what can they do to help you. Laura and Ted put together some feedback from the girls and the boys side organizations. I think the bottom line is that, and this is true nationally in all sports, you know, we have a severe lack of officials. Officials are aging out. We're all getting really old, and not able to do it, and getting injured and that kind of thing. And sportsmanship has been a huge issue. Now, you guys as a league, or I should say your league and all of your programs, I think you guys do a really pretty amazing job with sportsmanship. You've got a great system set up. You have good expectations. It doesn't seem like, and I don't know, you can all address that, but it doesn't seem like that's a huge issue for you. I think really the thing is everybody needs to be very intentional about trying to recruit officials locally. And both your organizations do an awesome job with junior officials. That's a really great way to you know, get kind of people in the pipeline, because a lot of junior officials stay with it. They kind of get the bug and then they continue on. They can officiate in college and do high school games. They can do all kinds of things. So junior officials are a great way to grow the game, just like when you try and, you know, get your 8U's numbers up. Recruiting junior officials is great. There's some you know, ideas for recruiting officials on the screen here. I think Laura can speak to NCJLA. You guys have some requirements around programs recruiting officials, is that correct?
We do. If Chris can go back to the other side. Okay, so this is where I guess the officials organizations chimed in and were like, these are all the things that we do, but we need people to cover the games, and especially with you guys growing so rapidly with your CIF teams and just your B-level teams. The chapter wants to know, what do you need from them in order to get these two organizations people to ref the games? So, one factor to consider here is that, there's a lot of questions about should refs be going across county lines or city areas to go ref in a different city games. So, some of you guys have a ton of refs in your town and some 1 or 2. So we're really planning really early, and NorCal has graciously agreed to help with this project. So with that, I guess we'll open it up to, how can they help you?
Yeah, I mean, another place to look for officials is, folks that are officiating other sports for you locally. Basketball officials make awesome lacrosse officials, other than the field of play is a lot bigger. But sometimes they get a little freaked out about having to run that much. But other than that, they get the game. A lot of the offense and defense and calls are similar, especially on the girls' side. So that's a good source. There's other great sources. We don't need to spend a lot of time about that. But I think the point here was to plant the seed now that everybody is, and it's not just NorCal, is starting to see officiating crises, basically. It really is kind of getting, especially at the high school level, because you need adults to officiate there, and they're becoming fewer and fewer. We're not bringing anybody into the pipeline. So really think about that as a program. And in light of COVID, as Laura said, it might be that we really have to localize everybody that's involved with the games. And if that's the case, there are areas that are going to have a huge problem because they just don't have officials there. So I can't stress the importance enough of really thinking about that, because what do we need to play the game, right? Aside from players, we need coaches, officials, and fields. Yes, but coaches and officials, we can't do it without all of those. They're kind of the support system. So it's a big deal. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you said, we need adults, and I'll just make a point. My son is 14, and he really wanted to become an official, and he's gone through all the training. And I went from I've coached, I've been an appropriately vocal sideline parent for many years. I think it's the key about the refereeing is that the adults on the sidelines actually manage themselves and with the respect that the referees deserve, and the flight. And so being now a father of a young man being an official, I really have a different, view. And I think that aspect of it is what worries him the most, is these adults. He's 14 years old. He reffed a couple of games, and it was a matter of everybody staying appropriate, and that really pushes kids out who don't want to be there, because if that's where the youth are going to be the ones being the refs, they don't have any part of it if they're going to get abused. And so I really become far more sensitive to that, and I think that is probably a message that probably goes to the parents. I know we have the sideline managers.
Yeah,
I've seen sideline managers be as abusive as any other parent, and yet they're so that's kind of the dynamic that I think we have to think about as well. That's the other side of reffing, is and why there's this exodus, is the difficulty of being a ref with overzealous and inappropriate sidelines.
Oh, absolutely. There is no doubt. That is a huge issue. Even, again, you guys as a league, you've got some great systems in place, sideline managers, all of that. But as you just pointed out, sometimes the right people aren't in that position. That's definitely going to happen. I think a couple of things. I think that, again, you guys are fortunate. Your LOAs, or Lacrosse Officials Associations, NCWLO on the girls' side, NCLRA on the boys' side, have good relationships with the NCJLA. Laura's an official. I'm an official. You've got a lot of officials amongst your league folks. So I think what's important for the officials is, somebody was just asking in the chat, what can you do to support them? I can speak a little bit really quickly to certification, and Laura can speak to that, what it takes to become an official. But I think what needs to be really messaged to them, and I believe that your LOAs probably do a good job, but programs can certainly do a much better job, just in terms of making sure that everybody's aware that absolutely zero tolerance for any kind of discussions. I actually, with officials from the sidelines, I have a league, it's the girls' league up in Washington State where I'm at. They actually wrote in their league rules that parents and coaches, because sometimes coaches are the worst, cannot speak to the junior officials during the game. They can only speak pregame and halftime. Otherwise, it's an automatic. I think there's like one warning, and then it's a yellow card. So now again, is a teenager going to yellow card a coach? That's an issue too. Most of them are just way too intimidated. So you really have to come from the perspective of trying to make sure that every single coach and every single adult in the vicinity of that game completely understands they've got to zip it. They've got to keep their mouth shut. And that's an ongoing, educational process. But I think that, making sure that when the junior officials are trained, they completely understand that if they have any problems whatsoever, they've got an adult they can call who will shut that down. I think that, I'm sure this is probably true because you guys have your SIR report system in other leagues, like for instance, that Washington League with the girls, all of those, so we have mostly teenage girls who are officiating those youth games. If there's a coach problem, the girls can text. They have a designated person at the LOA. They can text them from the field, and they're immediately on the phone with the league, and that coach is getting a phone call right after that game. And they may be suspended from the next game if it was really egregious and they're very defensive about it. But 90% of the time, the coaches are, they just lose it. We're human. It's not okay, but it happens. And so, most of the time they never do it again. They're not a repeat offender, but the kids know that they have that support. So that is a really important piece to that whole sportsmanship issue. But yeah, it's a really big deal. Certification, you can find that stuff online. Laura can certainly point you to that. Your LOAs do an awesome job. They go through our certification process. They have in-person training. I think they provide, and you guys are speaking to those play days. Those are not just really important for you guys, but they're really important for the officials to get field time, because you only can learn that craft with time on the field.
Hey, Lynn, can I just chime in?
Yes, please. And I was trying to look at the chat here.
Some of you guys, I just want to be frankly honest, are really good with getting officials every year. And I'm like, wow, how do they do that? Is there anybody that can share something that their club is doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure how successful this is long term, but what we try to do is get our 14U boys and girls to officiate our 10U games. Right. Usually we've got majority 8th graders, and then a couple of 7th graders so that they can train the next group in line. And then when they become freshmen, several of them have gone on to become junior officials with the NCLRA at that point. So we get them into that mode in 10U, where it's kind of a lot mellower, or could be mellower. Now the trouble is, once they get to high school, sometimes they only last a year, because then they start driving and other things get in the way, or they took all they could take that first year. But it's just something we do. Time will
You
tell
know,
how
Eric,
successful that is.
no, I think that's great. You can do that with adults too, you know that. Just like we try and train those
Yeah.
adults to be coaches. That's how I started officiating. I started doing little kid games because they were dying for officials. And I said, "Oh no, I can do youth. I can't do high school." And of course, as soon as you do a couple games, they bump you up. But you know, that's a really good thing, because what we've really found with officials, and I've seen this across the country, is that the people who stick with it as adults have some kind of a tie to the game. Either the kids played or they played, or you know, whatever. It's pretty challenging to get somebody that doesn't have any kind of a tie to the lacrosse community to be an official or to continue on.
Has anybody successfully recruited adult officials? Anybody?
I have an idea, maybe going through Lacrosse Fanatics, seeing if they can somehow promote it, you know, so people coming in through their store would be an option. Another thing I'm thinking of, I don't know what the situation is with college next year. So players that graduated this year and are you know, going off to college or community college, to try and get them to come back and coach or ref, sorry. Especially if they're going to be doing online classes, and so kids are going to be sticking around the area. That's a great option.
It's a great idea. Or gap year. I've heard a lot of kids
There
really
you go.
considering gap year, and they're going to
Yeah.
have to stay local. It's not like they're going to be.
There you go.
How can we tie in? I guess.
We got to use this COVID thing to our advantage in any way we can, huh?
Right.
So
This is Kathy. We do pretty well by really encouraging like the parent and player doing the training together. So we've had a number of moms and sons or moms and daughters both go do the training together, and they sometimes are able to get games assigned together, or at least at the same field, that sort of thing. So
do those parents, do they traditionally have any lax experience or sports experience, or are they brand new generally?
I think generally they have sports experience, but they're limited in their lacrosse experience to their child's experience. So if their kid has played from 12 to 14 and now the kid is about to get into high school or is in high school, the parent and daughter might do the training together, and hopefully at least one of them sticks around.
And then I know we got to keep moving the discussion around, but with respect to those who have not successfully been able to recruit officials, whether it's junior or adult, what is, if you were to put your finger on maybe what the first or the second, the biggest roadblocks in the process are for you, that would be helpful to really target as well.
I would say for us, we struggle to find coaches every year already. We're a small club. I think this last year was our biggest year. Unfortunately, it kind of fell flat for everyone, but hopefully we can get all those registered players back. But it's for us just population, and the sport is still small in our area. So it is so difficult we're a small board, always looking for people. We are always struggling for coaches. So finding officials is just beyond my comprehension.
Is there?
Who was that again?
Michelle from Gold Country.
Okay.
Maybe there are ways that we can help facilitate that in understanding, like what could potentially motivate people to step up and at least stick their toe in the water.
This is Eric Smith from Yuba Sutter Lacrosse. We had kind of two issues. One of the biggest things with first-year officials, especially from our area, similar to Gold Country, the outline is they tend, since they have to pay travel for our officials pretty much, if you're coming from here, they tend not to get enough games to recover their costs the first year, and they get discouraged. So that's one of the things. The second objection I get, even among adults, is they don't want to get out there and they're brand new and getting abused at the same time. So maybe an extension of the no talking to junior officials would be some way to designate, hey, no talking to these first year officials for some, if there's a way to do that.
Maybe we could put an identifier on their arm, like a green man or something. Driver.
Right. That's what I was thinking too. Like I am some way so that maybe parents are take it easy on them.
Okay, and this is good. Anything else?
So for me, again, we're having a lot of changes in our club this year, so this is all good information for me to hear. And something I'm thinking of is to try and incentivize, specific teams to do whatever they can to help those, referees. I don't really know exactly how that would happen, but when you see a new referee out there, really, make them feel welcome, and I don't know, give them a juice box or something, just help them out in any way possible.
Okay. Well, I think especially for the outlier clubs, that it is really of paramount importance that you not try and do this alone. So when the time comes throughout the season, depending on the time of year, if we could, let's get engaged early so that we can try and assist you in these situations to try and drive. So at least, there are things that I don't think we've explored everything we can possibly explore in order to try and entice people, or at least to get people to think about it. So I think there are some opportunities that we have. Sometimes we got to get creative, but I think, I don't know, something that resonates with me, and I don't know, we'll have to vet this through, and a way to identify maybe those newer officials. And I don't know, without having to think it through very often, maybe that would be a negative thing. I'm not sure, but I think those type of ideas coming to the table are going to help get us in a situation that's better than where we're at today.
Hey, Chris, I just wanted to, I wrote it on text, but I wanted to mention that it should be important to emphasize to the parents during games that young officials are really in an educational experience themselves. They're not perfect by any means. So if we tell parents that they're learning and they're bound to make mistakes, that for the most part, I think parents behave better. I wrote it in chat, but I think the best official I had was at a Santa Cruz tournament where he came up to the parents and said, I will make mistakes, but I love for you to tell me what those mistakes are during a break or after a game. I'm not opposed to chatting with every one of you if I have to, in order to learn more from this game. It was a young official, but he just, parents just wouldn't say anything. They just went ahead and were for the most part quiet, because I understood that the ref was doing their very best. So, and then there's the opposite, right? From an official that absolutely does not tolerate any of it. And I think the games that I've seen in that area, they are in the opposite spectrum of behavior. Anyway, so especially to protect our young officials, it will be great. I expect my kid to start officiating in a couple of years. Hopefully, it'll be a good experience for him, but it's important to tell the parents this is an educational experience for the officials, especially if they're young. The ban idea is great, but always speak to the parents. Some adult in the game has to speak to the parents. It could be the coaches, to say, hey, we have an official that is brand new. He'll make mistakes. Please, give him a break or cut him a break.
Okay. Good deal. Thanks,
Chris, have we reached out to other organizations? If we have lacrosse referee associations, does basketball have them, that trying to recruit folks from sports that are not in the same season? It's hard to get lacrosse parents to be referees when they still have kids in the game. Can the different associations help each other?
I'll let Laura and Lynn speak to this specifically, but I would think just off the top of my head that if it's within the same season, they may not be inclined to help because they want the officials to work with their organization. But outside of that season, maybe there's an opportunity. So I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll just say that I'll just be frank, okay? You're looking at this as if we're not going to be dealing with COVID-19 in the spring or in the fall. Sharing officials from one organization to the other worked as a Band-Aid for a while. You know, basketball plays year-round now. Field hockey's starting to go year-round. Soccer's starting to go year-round. And we need to be responsible for creating our own officials. And one of the very real concerns that the officials organizations are facing and grappling with right now is that we may not be able to assign an official living in Sacramento to travel to Folsom to work a game. Or we may not be able to have an official that's living in Elk Grove to drive to Chico to cover a game. So, yes, we can recruit from other sports. Yes, sometimes those guys or women turn out to be amazing officials and they do wonderful. But, you know, we have to find people who have no experience, who just have a love for seeing their kids be able to play, or their, you know, niece, nephew, neighbor play. I'm happy to talk offline or in the chat about this. But we do need to move on to the next topic. Lynn and Ted's information is on the slide here for you. There's a lot of great resources, flyers that you can print out and put in stores or in Lacrosse Fanatics storefront. Ted also has some great ready to print materials that you can use. But you know, please make sure you go back to your clubs and let them know that this is a very real concern that we got to start developing within our own club. So with that, Chris, I'll let you go to the next topic. Sorry to cut it short. I know it's, you know, a big topic.
Okay, so let's talk scheduling process, and the training and support. So obviously we've kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of the dates of when things happen, and trying to gauge the members' support or not for potentially moving the dates of items. We discussed, you know, should the A level and high school levels be moved to January? I think we kind of touched on that it wouldn't be, but is it still beneficial for clubs to schedule A and high school before their B teams? I would say, what do you guys think to that idea?
I would be in favor of moving it back with everybody else. It just gives more time for evaluations as to whether, you know, are we registering A teams? Do we have enough kids for a high school team, JV or varsity? I know Folsom's one of the few. You know, there are other clubs in our south and north regions here that we have most of the high school teams. There's not a lot from the west side or on the bay side. So I would think it would help us to have more time to recruit and really know, do we want to be a JV or a varsity? And do we have enough kids for an A level at 14 or 12? I would be in favor of moving it back.
So when you say moving it back, you mean having it at the same time as the B?
Yeah, not have it in December, have it in January.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so again, for us, we have to give all of that information to the city at the same time, right? So it's not like we've got to have our entire schedule set and then say, here we go. So there's no benefit to us to have that any earlier. Why not make it at the same time?
Okay, all right. What about other clubs?
Alameda would be in favor of moving it to having it in January as well. We would definitely use the extra time.
Yeah, this is Eric. I think, you know, I'm not really here nor there, but it'd be better for us at least to have the high school done first, and then we can coordinate our youth games to be concurrent with the high school, so we can schedule our fields so we have them more at the same day.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Then what about the in-person scheduling meeting? I mean, obviously there's a domino effect as things get potentially moved around. How are we with the corresponding in-person schedule timing related to everything?
This is Eric. There'd be some way to streamline it a little bit, or kind of pre-schedule like your league games in advance, just because it's a kind of a hassle for us in the hinterland to try to get it all coordinated and get there. And then teams don't like to come to Sutter County sometimes, so they use that as an excuse. You could have some, at least the league games scheduled, and then we could schedule around those. I don't have a good suggestion, quite frankly. It's not that helpful for us to do the in-person.
So what about the on-site scheduling that took place in the Sacramento region this last season?
I thought that was the greatest. That was the best scheduling thing I had, I guess, going to it was at Lacrosse Fanatics, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that was great. I didn't even have a need to go out to the Bay Area one.
The only problem I think we had with that meeting, it was that when we arrived, there were teams that had already, for our region, made arrangements. And so as soon as the meeting opened, speaking to a few groups, they already had an Excel spreadsheet, and like a quarter of it was full. Numerous teams I engaged with had that issue, and I had a new coach with me that was learning the process, and he was a little shocked by that, but I think that happens, but I'd like to see less of that so that everybody has an opportunity to work with everybody on the same playing field.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else experienced that, but we did.
So for me, I guess I'll just speak on 2 different years of experience, right? Last year and then the year prior. 2 years prior, right, I had we had one scheduler, I guess, for the whole club. That for me was not great. That's they ended up putting us in a low, the B rookie division. I didn't like that. They didn't schedule us as many games as I would have liked. So I think it should be each club's own responsibility to have a coach for each team there to represent them. At least, if you have a scheduler, that's fine, but at least bring a coach from each team so that they can be responsible for their team scheduling. And that's what I did the next year, and it ended up working out great. I get what you're saying, Gina, and I agree with you. There definitely was some behind the scenes scheduling that happened before the meeting, but that's going to happen. That's fine. It is what it is. Our schedule this year looked great. We filled up all 16 games. We had to do some moving around and be flexible within our schedule, but it ended up working out great. That's just my personal experience.
Yeah, ours ended up working out great too. Just a couple of games that we weren't able to get right here in our own backyard even. So that was a little hard.
Well, even with us, right, we had a pretty funky schedule that we had to adhere to, like a 7 a.m. travel game, but we ended up working it out.
What about the teams that don't not attend these events? Because often that'll throw a monkey wrench in the whole,
Well, and that's what I was going to.
Go
ahead.
I was just saying that if a
is there anyone here that?
Go ahead, Seth.
Go ahead, Chris. With the teams that didn't show up, is there any reason we can't do a online scheduling for B like we do for A?
Yeah, I would agree. We would also like online scheduling. In-person scheduling is really challenging when you have a lot of teams to work with. If you only have 1 or 2 teams per age group, it's manageable. But when you're talking 8, 9, 10 teams and you're trying to schedule in person, it just becomes really challenging.
Well, from my experience because this year I did the online for the A and the high school, and unless you have a person that's willing to do each team or each age group, the online can be just as confusing because you're moving from here to here and not everyone's online all together at the same time. So I could be scheduling a game with Club A and they're not on there and they don't say, yes, we want you to do that game, or no, we already scheduled with somebody else. Now I'm jumping to try and fill that spot while everyone else is all filled. So while it can be easier because there's not a meeting, it's still a lot of headaches involved. So we take all of our B teams and rookie teams and try to do this online. I think it'd be a much bigger headache than doing the in-person meeting, because now I've got to try to do 6 or 7 clubs, and if not everyone's online at that time, now we're just jumping through other hoops, which makes it a larger headache. That's just my thought on it from last year.
I second that for sure.
So if the date at Sacramento that was at Lacrosse Fanatic, if that wasn't at the same time as, you know, the A and high school online stuff opening up, that probably would be easier for you guys and more people would have attended. It's also in December on a Saturday when a lot of people have holiday parties. So, you know, maybe that would help with attendance.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. All right, Chris.
So Laura, this is Derek. So I think last year was the best year for us. I mean, what we did in Alameda was we had the coaches got together for the teams that we knew we were going to register. We tried to figure out what day we would actually get our field, because ARPD, Alameda Parks and Rec, doesn't assign them until very late in the process. And what we were able to do online was really good. And then by the time we got to the in person, there was a lot less to do. And we also brought coaches for each team, which was really a lot easier than in the past of just having a scheduler do it for all the teams. So the experience that we had last year was the best that we've had over the last couple of years. Our problem is still just working with ARPD, just getting the fields after that. That's our main problem, because we did have to move some things around from what we had originally what we had originally tentatively scheduled. But I think last year's process was the best so far.
Okay. With that said, let's go on to we touched on this briefly in the general session, but the submission of game schedules. So there's a possible alternative of coming up with giving clubs the ability to put their schedules on a spreadsheet in a template and submitting it to the NCJLA. So there would be, for example, there would be drop-down menus to help assist you in filling these things out. So whether it's the level, the team. So instead of going into the league athletics and entering game by game, you could actually just open up this spreadsheet, put which for whatever team you're working with, it has its own tab, and then fill out the drop-down menu, and then submitting that template or submitting that schedule, that spreadsheet to the NCJLA, as opposed to having to go in and enter games through the NCJLA website. The question for you is, would you prefer to have to submit schedules via that method through the spreadsheet, or would you prefer to go through league athletics?
Anything not league athletics would be our vote. I don't know how everybody else feels about league athletics, but I see a lot of laughter going on. Yikes. It's just very, it seems like there's a lot of workarounds and lots of steps, and I don't know. I don't know if you guys have frustrations with league athletics, but if I could see that go away, I'd love that. I know we were looking into something.
I think that template looks great.
Okay.
And
then.
And Laura, the template also contains not only site, but sub-site information as well, right?
Yep, it prompts you on everything that we would need. I do want to be clear, though, you would have to keep your boys' games and girls' games separate. So you would, if you have a boys division and a girls division, you'd have to submit 2 sheets. So, you know, we can help you with, you know, the admin task, and we'll definitely give some in-depth instructions and video, but this would prompt you with everything we need and hopefully make Dan's life and your life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this isn't like the end game solution. We are actively, to address Gina's love of the athletics, we are actively looking for better alternatives to our platform. So,
all right, well, this one was easy. Let's move on.
Okay. Okay, I don't, Laura, do you want to discuss the terms with respect to COVID in the regions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so like we said in the league-wide meeting, we're getting some feedback from some of the county public health officials and some of the national governing bodies that, you know, play should really be regional until we figure out, you know, what travel means. And so our question to you guys is, if we start, or not if we start, but if we have to go with these public health officials' recommendations, how many teams would make an ideal conference? You know, how do we help, you know, incentivize travel to clubs, you know, that are considered outliers? You know, we don't want to force people to travel. I don't think that's the right way to do that. You know, but what incentives would you guys like to see for those that are like, hey, you know what, we can help out this year. You know, we can travel up to you guys. So I guess that's just really what we're looking at. How big could a conference be? And, you know, what incentives?
You know, a good incentive, sorry, this is Phil with Backlash. So a good incentive might be to prioritize the most convenient time slots so that someone doesn't have to travel very early or very late in the day.
We sort of did it as a reciprocal type thing. We owed them, they owed us, or whatever. And I know the upper regions way up in, like, you know, Mendocino and areas get. So we make it known in the very beginning of the season that there will be something like that. It will be a team travel, bonding, you know, situation. And that usually gets parents to jump on board. And that's been really great. For us, we always like to take the trip to Mendocino and make it a weekend team bonding, you know, deal. So I think if, you know, you played there last year, then you play here this year, and it just kind of needs to go back and forth. And we need to give them that opportunity because they always have to travel. Chico too.
So I like this thing of a neutral site to facilitate play. And I think another great thing is round robin. So trying to bring 3 teams together, you know, and so that way we can play the most games for each team possible when traveling like that. The only thing I have, the only thought that comes to mind, I guess, with that, you know, traveling to Mendocino and stuff, that's great for the teams that are financially able to do that kind of thing. But if we're really trying to push to get lacrosse into a sport that's more, you know, able to play for everybody that may not financially be able to, like, let's just say, afford the initial cost registration and all that to begin, how are these teams going to be able to afford going to a Mendocino for a weekend? You know what I mean? It's like that kind of ideology, I guess, really is going to eliminate a lot of demographics for the greater Sacramento region and a lot of other regions as well.
I get what you're saying,
it's
Connor.
a great idea. It's just we got. Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying, Connor, and I agree with that 100%, which is why we decided to go like the every other year plan, which made it easy for parents to, you know, ideally, I guess, plan ahead and know what's coming. So.
Right. I'm just trying to think if we could somehow come up with a way, like a neutral, you know, area that, I don't know.
Right.
I don't. You know, like some of these places where they host music festivals and things like that. What if we could somehow get one of these venues and do like a round robin tournament, and maybe they'd allow camping. I don't know. I mean, this is just all off the top of my head, but
well,
there's got to be something we can come up with.
There may be potential issues with doing round robin tournaments looking forward in the season, depending on where the COVID phases lie. But one thing I'd like to ask everybody on the call is, has anybody attempted to set up games at a neutral site location with another team that, somewhere in the middle? And to what degree has that been successful or not? I guess, first of all, the first question is, has anybody tried to do that? Followed up by, how did it go?
Yeah, this is Eric. In the past, occasionally we've done it. As long as we had the field reserved for the day, we've done it. Where Chico could meet another team, and sandwich in between games and that kind of stuff, and it worked fine. But it's rare that it really works at all. And just to add on to Gina's, it's easier to travel to those outlying places if we can get several different age groups for the club traveling at the same time. Because when you have parents with kids on 2 or 3 different teams, if they're all going the same place at the same time, it makes life a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah, Eric, my scheduler really tried to do that this year, and I think we had a lot of games set up with clubs coming across age groups, and I think that was well received by all the schedulers. So if there was some way we could maybe pre-plan the larger clubs that are in the same groups to play against each other in our regions on the same days to mitigate excessive travel on families, that'd be great.
So this is Derek. So
and this is Stephanie.
On Stephanie.
Derek, I think you stepped in first. What was it?
Yeah. So this is Derek. So what we were doing when we went onto the spreadsheet, it was really there was a lot of back and forth, being able to look at trying to get multiple teams. Either we didn't try the neutral site, but if we had to travel far, we were trying to actually get another team that was up where we were going to come up to that, to the home field of that other club. And I think that there was a lot of back and forth amongst those, the schedulers trying to do that. So it made it more palatable if we were going to drive all the way up to have those games. We didn't necessarily look across different age groups, but if we were just going to have it on a discrete team going far, to have more than one game, so that we would actually fill the weekend a little bit better, and then maybe the second day of the weekend we would have like a home game, so it wouldn't be as onerous. But or we wouldn't even play it that second, on a Sunday or something up if we traveled far on Saturday and had 2 games. So that was what we thought worked well. Unfortunately, we didn't get through the season, but that was kind of the idea. And we also did what Gina had mentioned was reciprocal in the years past, where if we knew Chico came down to us, then the next year we knew that we were going to go up to them. And so we really tried to be fair with that, so that travel was equitable.
Okay. Stephanie, I think
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie.
That's okay. I just typed it in. I said we had a round robin scheduled with a Bay Area team at Davis. We just never got to play it, but Davis seemed like a good in between to lure some Bay Area teams, especially Bs. It's really hard to get Bay Area B teams to come here.
Yes, we're going to try and do that more this year, host stuff. I know last few years we haven't. Davis hasn't hosted much, but that's, as a new president, it's one of my goals is to be able to do that at least once, or if not more. So I haven't announced anything because I don't control the fields yet, but stay tuned. I'm working on that.
I love this talk of a possible travel grant. So again, my area of concern is just for parents or players that can't afford that travel, right? for whatever reason. Staying in a hotel room may not be feasible. Driving separate may not be feasible. Is there any way we could possibly get like a bus? Again, I don't know, but so we could get teams traveling as one to help cut costs of these kinds of travel games.
Yeah, Connor, we can talk on the side about that. There is a company that offers discounts for youth sports for renting the like 15 passenger vans. So yes, cool. We can chat about it. All right, Chris, you ready to go to this one? Is this where we're at?
Home and away. We wanted to get some feedback on home and away rules. You know, it's a topic of conversation that came up last year, and we wanted, solicit feedback on how teams feel about that. I know we just came off of discussing, the kind of the rule of reciprocity, where 1 year you play for one team and then the next year you go visit them. This kind of takes it to the more immediate future of the home and away, especially in a year where there may be restrictions in place for a club to go play outside of their region, and how you get more games within that region. And this may be potentially one of those ways that we could, adopt a ruling to get more games. We just want to follow up on what's your feedback on this type of scenario. Real world limitations and different phases in different counties may kind of force our hand here. Any additional feedback on the home and away rule, potentially?
This is Eric. We don't have a lot. We're stuck. We got to travel out of our region no matter what. So if they really clamp down, our club would probably have to dissolve if we couldn't travel into other regions to play.
Any other feedback?
I mean, if you guys are doing the home and away, does your conference, does it get more difficult if we go above 6 teams in that conference? I would have to say yes, right? Because then that's home and away. That's about 12 games for you. You're already filled.
Yeah.
Actually, that makes it easy for us. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
For Alameda, we ended up playing, at least at the high school level, we ended up playing many of our, we would have played, had we gotten through the season this year, many of our conference rivals several times, both home and away, and then we also did a couple of round robins. We just had the bottom line is we lost a couple teams right before that we would have been able to play. So we actually scheduled additional games, but we did actually do as much as we could from a home and away standpoint. The other thing is that we just got, we're on our 3rd year of having an all-weather field. So there were other teams that we ended up trying to play earlier at home on our field when it was wetter, and then we would look to play away later in the year when the rains had stopped. So we tried to kind of balance that, but I think 5 or 6 teams in the conference would work well for us. So
all right, good deal.
Hey, this is Scott with Fair Oaks. What exactly is the problem with the home and away? Are some folks like having to play all their games away and some have to play all at home? I mean, what's the problem?
So in the past, there's been just general guidance that you play home and away with your conference teams. And so, if I'm, Pleasanton Pride, I play San Ramon, I play Diablo Scorpions, I play Walnut Creek, I play Lamo, home and away. I'm then up to 8 games, which leaves only, 4 or 5 games for out of conference. And so, people are like, well, wait a second, we don't really have that rule. So why can't we play you on that date that you're playing San Ramon? And it, without it being an official rule, it's kind of tough to be like, okay, well, how big should those conferences be if we want to encourage people to travel and play other teams that they typically wouldn't see? To El Dorado Hills' point, they have a hard time, an extremely difficult time getting people to play them, even though they're one of the best competitions out there. So I guess that's really what that question about home and away is, if the board does decide to adopt it, and there's a lot of, general, hey, we should support this, we don't want to make the conferences so big that then you guys are like, well, I've got to get more fields, So I think whoever just said 5 to 6 teams, that's helpful. And I hope I answered your question, Eric.
Yeah, this is Eric Smith again. I think it would be helpful if we did that to maybe schedule in conference first, and then either on the maybe the first hour of the meeting is in conference only, and then schedule out of conference, or different days would make it a little more palatable to schedule, because a lot of times we try to schedule our home and aways, and all of a sudden they've got these out of conference games already scheduled, and we have a hard time scheduling our conference.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in support of making that a requirement in conference. And I mean, you get 12 games if there's 6 teams, that's fantastic. And then you got 2 travel weekends that are longer term travel. That's a perfect season, in my opinion.
I just want to make sure, that was Eric from Folsom?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's talk about education.
No, go ahead.
No, did you have one last thing?
No, Stephanie covered it well about, Folsom had the same problem with some A teams not wanting to come to us. I know Granite Bay did too, but that's more of an A problem, just because, there's so few of us in the Sacramento area.
Chris, before you go on.
Yeah, I'll second that, Dominic. Because, with B teams, we're
Stephanie, you there?
Yeah, Laura jumped in, so I was letting her talk. Did she not mean to? No? Okay. No, I was just saying with B teams, we've had good luck with home and away, but A teams, on the girls' side, it was horrendous. And on the boys' side, we had better luck this year with 12A, but that was a huge reason that we don't even care about going A, because we can't even get a full schedule unless we go to the Bay every weekend.
Okay. We'll continue to work.
I know you guys know how I feel about this, so it would have to be home and away for us.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Chris, this is Derek. I just had a question. Are we going to talk about high school designations of JV and varsity, or is that going to be later? Or
in the boys session, we're leading off with that topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the educational component of our program. Should the NCJLA staff continue to coordinate clinics, or should clubs submit their request to host a clinic to the NCJLA? What can the NCJLA do to increase attendance at these clinics? And what other trainings or educational materials would your coaches want from the NCJLA? Essentially focusing on what's being provided as of today. How do you feel about what's being provided? And are there additional opportunities we're either missing out on or that you'd like to see regarding any of these coaches clinics and trainings that take place?
I'll jump in here. This is Eric Boda again. I'll tell you this, the best turnout we had for coaches education was A, hosting that education, and B, getting a huge discount for hosting that education, right? It was easy for us to tell our coaches, yes, this is essentially free to show up to this thing because we're hosting, and we had a great turnout that year. And I think with the newer training over the last few years, the DIA and stuff, it's just by coming out to that one that made people want to go to level 2 and level 3.
What was with those clinics? Do you happen to know a coach or the club, maybe the furthest person to travel to attend one of those clubs or one of those training sessions? Do you know offhand?
We had Delta Breeze. I'm forgetting his name and I can't recall who it was. He came out to one of those. That was about the furthest that it came up to here. Okay. I guess we had a couple of Marin guys come as well, kind of some latecomers.
We had one Mino guy too come down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with you guys. Eric, our coaches loved that it was really close and that it was, the ability to just, not have to go to the Bay Area or somewhere else. So keeping things regionally, is way easier on volunteer coaches. Weeks, there's so much they have to do.
What about the caliber of coaching, comparing the difference between coaches that attend the on-site versus the ones that do digital only? You notice a difference?
I've never looked at that, but that's good to know, good to think about.
This is Eric Smith at Yuba City. Anecdotally, coaches that attend or have been to those, they are a lot better.
Well, that is good to hear.
Are there? Go ahead, Laura.
No, I was just gonna say, Marco and I are putting in the links to some of these additional add-on coaches resources. If you guys are interested in that, I don't know. We did touch a little bit on diversity and some of the issues with racism that we're going to be tackling later, but all these organizations around the bottom of the screen have really great free courses. So is it safe to say you guys are happy with the staff coordinating and doing logistics and all that follow-up?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool.
And then we had an item marked. What about things like CPR, first aid, training sessions, autism support training, diversity training? How do you feel about what's currently being offered? What would you like to see? Are there any other on-site kind of trainings that we could offer that would be useful, or do we pretty much want to stick with the level 1, level 2, level 3s? These are all optional, by the way. I mean, when we talk about some of these extra ones like the first aid and the on-site.
I think the first aid would be good. For me personally, I mean, it's like if there's we don't necessarily have a trainer at every game, and it would be good to know just a bit more what to do.
We have it as an on-site situation. We bring all our coaches to one meeting. There's a group up here that will come to you. CPR, first aid, and AED, and we pay for that for our coaches to get certified. It's like $60 for each one, and we do it all in one shot. And it's great to have all that training as an extra added feature for our coaches. So if anybody's interested in that, I can let you know who those folks are too. And I know they travel, so.
Do your coaches, are they given like CPR cards and things like that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Gina, do you have on-site AEDs?
Pardon me?
Do you have on-site AEDs?
Yeah, at every site.
Through the city or through your club?
Pardon me? We're talking over each other. What, Eric?
Sorry. Through the city or through your club?
It's through our club, but we're supported by the high schools. So it's mainly at the high school level, but they let all of our youth programs use it. Because we don't typically play except on turf at the stadiums. We have a couple of off-site areas that we use occasionally, but we're very fortunate that we have Roseville High School now, soon to be CIF, hopefully this coming season, depending on what happens with us returning to school. But we also have Wood Creek, who's been, the longstanding school that we've been at. And so those are all monitored by the school and a doctor and the school nurse, and it's great to work with them. And they've totally allowed us the opportunity to extend that to our youth to continue to grow the program.
Gina, how long is that training? Is it a one day or is it a couple hours? I mean, like how long is it?
It's like 4 hours. We do it from like 5 to 10, 6 to 10, somewhere right around there, and we get it pumped out. So there's usually I try to do 6 or so in a class so that it's not too crowded, and they usually come out once or twice, and we get everybody certified. They're a local Sacramento company. Actually, one of the guys that does it is a Roseville resident. So he's right in Roseville, so it's easy for him to come to any of y'all.
I'd be interested in getting more information about that.
For sure. I'll send it to Laura and she can send it out in the notes.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Gina.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're quickly approaching the end of the call. We got a couple more items to hit through. So I could pace through these last few items kind of quickly. If anything should come up that we don't get to touch on through the end of this call, please reach out to myself or Laura and let us know so that we can either get you answers back or add your question or your recommendation to a list that we're compiling for today. So the club support. So we at NCJLA, we want to support club administrators. We want to give you the tools to be successful. I know that there has been a ton of work put into a very comprehensive plan for club administrators. I know that administrators, they get in with their kids when they're young and they cycle out when they move forward, and sometimes that the transition plan isn't quite there, or sometimes that handoff doesn't really happen as well as it could. So a part of the NCJLA trying to help out with those type of situations is making sure that the clubs know that there are resources available to you that they can use to, one, structure the different components of your club administration, but also communicate them in any entry or handoff that takes place with any new admins. So it's important to know, first of all, does everybody know about the club operations manual and it as a resource to you? Everybody, yes?
Raise your hand.
Yes.
Okay. If not, it's on the, go to NCJLA website, you see there's a club leadership and support, and with the links that take you to the calendar, to the operations documents. It breaks down, depending on your position, what you should be doing and at what time of the year you should be doing it. So the calendar function is extremely helpful. If you want to know, like, oh, when should I be thinking about ordering uniforms? When should I be getting our financial documents in place? When do I close out the year? Those type of things. It's all broken down in there. Let's see, what else? Any sample documentations that you need, hold harmless agreements, tax donation letters. These are all things that will significantly help you make your lives easier if you don't already know they exist, or if you're transitioning with another individual taking over your responsibilities. We have checklists involved. It's, what do I got to do? A lot of people just know off the top of their head because they've been doing things for a while. And the danger is that one item on the checklist that they forget about that doesn't get passed on. So these documents are a great way to stay on top of everything that takes place throughout the course of the year, not just during the season. And I don't know, I can't say enough about it. Laura, is there anything I'm leaving out?
We're just going to continue to build this out. Does anybody have anything that they've been looking for lately?
No, as a matter of fact, Laura, I created a succession plan when I came on 3 years ago, and this made my life amazing this year because I will be staying on the board but stepping down as president, and so I use this in the president's binder so that every position on our board has a binder, so nobody has to reinvent the wheel. But this I added into what I had. And I know that whoever takes over is going to be this is phenomenal. It's really a great calendar. Thank you. No problem. Because all my sticky notes were everywhere. A little hard to follow. I had to type up a lot of stuff, and this just made it really easy and added a few things that I had missed, like Chris said. So.
All right, well then it sounds like this slide we don't really need to go over because you guys were using the Drive, you were using, you know, the Google Calendar invites and stuff.
If anybody's like me, there's so many things going on in our lives, and I got 3 kids, and if it wasn't for Google Calendar, I don't know how I would survive it all. So the link to Google Calendar is one of the lifesavers for me and keep me on top of everything.
Agreed.
Laura, also please continue to send that monthly email with all of those things. That's also a nice reminder in your email box if you're not looking at it.
Oh yeah, okay.
For sure.
That's awesome.
Got it, thank you.
Let's see here, what do we got? The club support and outreach clinics and sources of financial aid. Lynn, I don't know.
So Chris, you want me to, so this one was based off a lot of the conversations that we had with you guys in those COVID check-in meetings. A lot of you guys had no idea that some of these things existed. And so this is just a brief overview of things that will be around. The NorCal Lacrosse Foundation just simply gives out grants and loans to programs and to individuals, you know, to participate in lacrosse. So if you guys are not aware of this organization and, you know, you've given out all your reserves to your players, you know, this would definitely be something to hit up in the fall. They do quarterly applications. So familiarize yourself with their organization. Lynn is the person to talk to about all these US lacrosse ones down here. Lynn, just briefly, do you know when these will open up?
That's a really good question. We're hoping to once again open up the apps in the late summer like we did last year, and I'll keep you guys posted on that. We've been working really hard to be financially able to continue to do grant help. So it's looking good. It's looking good.
Okay.
But she's got links there. If you guys have any questions on those, just ping me, you know, offline, shoot me an email, give me a phone call. I think as you guys start to have more conversations around diversity and inclusion, you know, a big piece of that is accessibility, and that's where a lot of this can be really beneficial. And just a quick reminder too about those hardship memberships that we do. If you're not familiar with those, ping me and we'll make sure that you've got that in your kind of arsenal of what you can do to support your players.
We've also got a question in the chat about getting involved in these programs to help be, you know, quote unquote, the boots on the ground. Lynn is the person to email about that. If you are offering something at like a school or you're doing a PE class, please email me. There are commissioners, myself, that are available during the day to go and help you with those things. You know, all of the ones that are available actually have State of California Department of Justice clearance as teachers to go into those PE classes and help. So if you're planning to do something out of school, let us know, and we will do our best to send somebody from the NCJLA to help you and help the teachers and be there if, Lynn can't get any US clinicians. So I just want to let you guys know about those resources.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, ping me, Eric, about Sankofa. I can get you up to date on that and how to be a clinician.
Okay. Let's move on to the operations guide, which I'm sure everybody on this call knows forwards and backwards. No? Yeah. Okay. So a couple things that we're looking at with updates, is coach recruiting rules in terms of clarification. What are the guidelines that would be helpful for your club? What would a coach or a parent need to know about youth recruiting? And then what other operations guide adjustments, additions, things would you guys like to see?
How do we define recruiting there? I mean, it's not always that coaches are going out and recruiting folks, but sometimes you have people that want to play for other organizations because they've got buddies on the team or something like that. I don't know.
So you just would like to know what the definition of recruiting is?
Yes. Just because someone comes to our organization and maybe they have a relationship with a coach, right? We've got a lot of coaches that coach club ball, and it puts us in this bad spot where we're not necessarily recruiting, but they may really like this coach and they may submit a petition to play outside. And I mean, we follow all the rules, but it doesn't look good. And it's not necessarily recruiting. It's, I think I'm going to have a better experience. And same with our kids going elsewhere. It's tough to say you can't coach because someone liked you and wanted to follow that coach over to Granite Bay or El Dorado Hills or something like that.
Okay. Good. Any other items to call out or to clarify? Or?
I would agree with Eric, but it's hard to continue to grow your littles up and have your programs be able to feed into your high schools when kids are going over to other clubs, because then that limits our numbers. And we all know we can't tell parents where to have their kids play or any of that, but it makes it really hard to keep the rec program in your area continuing to grow up when people are jumping all over the place. So if they remain in their own boundary, or for example, they can't play at a certain high school in their boundary, then to stay over there would be a good idea. However, oftentimes it's not, because then they get to high school and then they can't play because of the boundary that they're in, because there's maybe not a program at the CIF level. Like Folsom has that issue, and I know like Oakmont in our area has that issue. And so then then they have to go to a club program. And so to have played with the kids that they should have been playing with all along, knowing that they don't have a program to go into, I think sometimes builds better teams and builds better coach experiences. So I'm like super 50-50 on that whole situation, because it's unique to each area, but it's also really difficult on some of the smaller programs, I think, that lose kids to the bigger programs. And we've been lucky out here because we've had the program for 10 years or so now, but we also lose kids to a lot of surrounding areas now. So I would just we got to try to figure out a way to keep the rec program, you know, continuing to build, because that's what we all want. We all want kids to continue to grow in this game and play with their friends. And you pretty much have to do that in every other sport, and you really can't jump around, but the sport you can. So I just don't know where we can draw the line.
Hi, Dave Lang, Granite Bay Lacrosse. You know, I find kids really want to play with their friends and contacts that they make. You know, we have kids that do, you know, horseback riding or whatever they do. They play with their soccer and other things. They want to go play with their friends, and that's the ultimate thing. That's the driver. And anything that gets in the kind of the way of letting that kid play makes it difficult. So that'd be my point: is fewer rules.
Okay. Anything else? Whether it's addressing the recruiting or the boundaries, or any other suggestions about the ops guide that you may have. No? Okay. Well, with that, unless there's anything else, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if there's any other topics that this region wanted to chat about.
I put in the chat a little bit about refunds and how some of your clubs might have dealt with that. We ended up, based on where our budget was, we offered $100 back to each of the players, and if you wanted to leave it with the club as a donation, we sent people tax letters. And some parents weren't real happy about how much we gave back and wanted to dive into the books, and we're worried about how that might impact numbers next year, and especially with the folks being out of work or reduced pay. The whole financial picture is kind of a challenge. When in some cases, I don't know if one of our teams didn't play any games, and that's all we could afford as far as refunds. I don't know how that kind of resonated throughout the clubs, if that's something that you all want to just take a minute or two to chat about.
At Gold Country, we offered 2/3 of a refund to our seniors, since they obviously don't have the option to roll over to next season, and they could opt out and give their remaining portion as a donation, which about half of ours did. And for everyone below seniors, it was rolled over. We didn't offer any refunds at all. We were rolling over 2/3 of their registration for next year, hoping that keeps our registration, stable. And we didn't have any kickback with that. So we had one family who's leaving the area, and I said we would consider that at another time, but we had to offer what we could offer to all. And we couldn't afford to open, full refunds for JV down to 8U. So that's how we handled it.
Sacramento Lacrosse did kind of a combination for the 10Us, because they had just gotten their season started. We did 75% refund. For everybody else, we offered a 50% refund. But if you left your money with Sacramento Lacrosse, we gave you an extra $50 credit. So really trying to encourage their people to leave the money where it was with that discount. And then we also offered the ability just to donate your registration to the club. And all in all, it seemed to work very well. And actually a number of people emailed their happiness with that program compared to what they were experiencing with other sports registrations.
We obviously had some sunk costs with uniforms that we're going to have the same uniform next year, so we're going to have to reevaluate what our registration fees are. Field rental, we had some of that. That in the beginning of the season, we're renting a field because our home fields are grass and we're not allowed to use them while it's raining. And so that was some of like, why are you making us pay? Why are you only giving us this large of a refund? We said there's some costs, so we didn't do any other fundraisers that we've done maybe throughout the year that would have put us in a, we're still in a good financial position, but just in terms of overall numbers, we just didn't have the same financial situation I'm sure as many of you experienced this year. So just curious, and hopefully it doesn't impact numbers next year. But that's something to tackle that we had to and to make a call. But just again, we're curious as to how folks reacted to that locally.
The other thing we did was to tell people what our expenses were beyond the season. We kind of gave folks a list of things of reoccurring fees, annual fees that the club incurs regardless of a season happening or not, just to try to give folks as much insight as to how we came up with the number we did.
Kathy, we did the same, and I think that was instrumental in folks not having any pushback to us. I mean, we did right by them in terms of giving back money, but by being open with, hey, here's all the stuff we pay for before we even have a season, was pretty helpful.
I think a lot of our families were enlightened by that as well. And so we did the exact same thing as Sacramento. We got offered several options, and we got a ton of donations back, which was great, including our 8Us and 10s that didn't even have a season, which I thought was amazing because they just want to grow the sport. And so I'm glad that, there wasn't a ton of pushback. So.
Yeah, we found that being transparent with our families really kept the pushback to a minimum, and we gave about 50% across the board, but it was pretty easy to decide.
It was like 4 families out of 100, so it wasn't like it was a lot, So
not bad. We had a lot of donations as well.
Yeah.
That was what Alameda did. We let them know what our sunk costs were. We offered about 50% return, and also we got a ton of donations as well. So about half and half. Half took the refund, 50% refund, and the rest just donated. So that's how we handled it. And we also told them that we had some young coaches that we wanted to keep on board, and they did a phenomenal job of doing the practices prior to the season starting and as far in. So we also made good on their contracts, and we let the club parents know that as well, that we were going to pay them out, and we wanted to maintain those coaches going into next year. So we didn't get much pushback at all.
That's good to hear, Derek, because we were rallying around the coaches as well and trying to figure out what to do. This normally would be the time we're sending out the thank yous and having their party and, pizza and beer night or whatever, and we just can't do that. So that's good to know. So thanks for that feedback.
Well, everyone. I appreciate everybody reacting to that.
The only issue that we had was we could not do electronic refunds because the payments were done more than, I think it was 90 days. So that was part of the process of the platform, I guess, that we're on. So we ended up having to, once we actually put out that Google Doc, we figured out who wanted to donate and who wanted to, who needed a refund. We then had to go and cut physical checks and mail them out, and that was probably the hardest part of what we needed to do, because we just couldn't return money to cards electronically.
Yeah, we did the same. We had a check writing party, and the adults made it fun as best we could.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm gonna have to let that be the last word. I
that's a bummer you guys did that.
Look, I gotta
okay.
Close out.
All I was gonna say is we actually
Go ahead, Steph. Hello?
I was just saying, if you reached out to League Athletics
you gave them a screenshot of your bank account, they did the refunds. But you had to reach out to League Athletics directly.
Oh, okay.
So that's where people had to write checks.
Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to close this down because I got another one starting at 5.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for calling
you.
in and the information you shared with
Thanks,
us.
Chris.
It's very helpful, and we're gonna use it and obviously try and make everything's better. Yeah. All right, thanks everybody.
All right.
All right, bye now.